Hello and welcome. My name is Carol Carter and welcome to our higher ed session. We are celebrating this month, Black History Month, with our higher education equity leader, Dr. Ryan Ross, who leads these sessions every month. And today you're really in for a treat because he has some extraordinary young women leaders, and they are going to share with us their perspective on how to correct the narrative. Black history is more than enslavement, and these are women who themselves are making history, and we're really delighted to welcome all of you here. For those of you who don't know, Global Minded is about creating a capable, diverse talent pipeline to get more women, people of color, underrepresented populations into education and economic mobility and leadership roles. So we look forward to you all being part of our community. We look forward to our community supporting each of you, and are really delighted now to hand it over to Dr. Ross. Welcome.
Right on. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to another month. It is so good to see everybody who is on with us. I am excited to have these young ladies introduce themselves here momentarily. We only have an hour, so we're going to jump right in. And in order to get us started, one of the things that I have to share is, the work that we do. When we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, when we talk about social justice, we talk about freedom. At every major movement, it's always been youth who are leading it, right? Whether right now, there's a lot of conversation about Chairman Fred Hampton, who led in Chicago. He was only 21 when he was taken away from us, when he was murdered. But when you look at every major movement, whether it's SNCC, whether it's Dr. King, it doesn't matter. Maya Angelou, right? Like youth and voice. And today is no different. And we've got some young people who I think we really need to listen to. We really need to hear from. They've got a lot to say. I am so proud of them. And, the work that they're doing, being champions for Black and African-American history in their schools and in the community is just to be celebrated. And, I think one of the most important things we can take from today's conversation before even hearing anything is that we need to support what these young ladies are doing. And so we'll get to that and to see how we can further support them. David, I see you in the comments. This is absolutely being recorded. It'll be available on YouTube, and we want you to share it far and wide. So that being said, ladies, welcome. We got an hour. Let's jump right in. It's time for you guys to introduce yourselves. We're going to start with Jenelle, then we'll go Alana, then Kaliah, and then Dahni. And so let's introduce yourselves, and we're going to jump right in.
All right. My name is Jenelle Nangah. I am 18 years old and a senior at DMLK. I am a co-host of the No Justice, No Peace podcast team and a founder of the BSA here at MLK.
All right, Alana.
My name is Alana. I'm 17 years old. I'm a senior at DMLK. I'm also one of the co-hosts of the No Justice, No Peace podcast and one of the founders of the BSA at DMLK.
Yep.
My name is Kaliah Yizar. I'm 15 years old, a sophomore at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Early College, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of the No Justice, No Peace podcast and one of the co-founders of the BSA at DMLK.
My name is Dahni Austin. I am 16 and I am also a sophomore at DMLK. And I'm also one of the founding members of the BSA and a co-host of the podcast No Justice, No Peace.
Right on. So you guys heard we got seniors and sophomores leading the way. Our seniors are, word on the street is that they have both applied to Howard University and that's where they want to go. So if you know people at Howard, you need to let them know that there's some talented folks from Denver, some talented young ladies who are looking for an opportunity, and Howard needs to make sure they admit them and give them scholarship dollars, help them out. I'm about to tell them to put their Cash App on this thing at the end. But let's support them. And then our sophomores who are thinking about college, this is just tremendous. Your podcast is great. Why is this important to you guys? Let's just jump in. Why is this important? And, you could have learned about history on your own. You could have just went home, read books, got on YouTube. Why is it important to you? And why is it important that this is a public facing learning opportunity?
Just to start, I think for all students it should be important and it should be something that all students have access to, because school, like when you're really, really young, I believe between the ages of 5 and 18, school is supposed to be your primary source of education. You shouldn't have to go on YouTube, or you shouldn't have to be spending your own money and your own time to learn things. You should already be learning in the beginning, especially considering that, like we've said this a million times at this point, but African American history is American history, and there's no reason it should be a separate class, or it should only be talked about during February, or it should only be in the context of slavery or the civil rights movement. There's so much about Black history that needs to be taught, not only in the context of school, but the Black history that's being taught in school right now in an even wider and better context, because our students aren't learning enough of this stuff that they're barely learning.
Mm.
And just to add on to what Kaliah was saying, I feel like, well, for one, when we went and we took our trip to DC and we came back and had our very last meeting, we had a moment where I feel like everybody in the room and in the meeting definitely connected. There was a lot of vulnerability within that community space, but there was also a lot of support. I know we didn't even really know most of the people that were going on that trip, and in the end we came out as a family, and that's really how we started our BSA. And so just being able to go through those experiences together and see these things and break down to each other, the common disparities that we all see in each other's lives, and really just be able to bond and be vulnerable and have it be accepted to just be emotional and not have to be the stereotypical angry Black girl or boy, just to be able to be hurt and be supported, is a feeling that we wanted to be able to bring back to our community. So when we came back and started everything, and honestly all of the results and everything that's been happening, I feel like we're going to be able to build community and progress as a community. I know that one of the things that we've been learning about since really diving into our history is just the resilience and all of the obstacles that our people have overcome. And I know that it brings a lot of optimism to all of us, but it also makes us want to be able to give that, will be able to show that to our community and to
Right,
others.
right.
And Dr. Russ, I kind of like that comment you made when you were like, why didn't you just go home and learn your Black history? And I know that for a long time, that like, why should we have to go home just to learn our history? Because school is a place where you're supposed to learn, and school is a place where you're supposed to learn to love yourself, learn to expand your knowledge, and learn about everything. So why should we have to go home just to learn more about ourselves and our community and how we grew up, our ancestors? And I think that, just piggybacking off of what Jenelle said, this Washington, D.C. trip, that really influenced me to start this advocacy work and being able to use my voice to help other students see the realization, so they don't have to go home and try to learn or do their best to learn more about themselves. Because sometimes the internet, when you're looking up information about yourselves, it might not always be true. And that's why I think that this African American Museum and this whole trip has bridged a way for us just to begin to start helping other students see the beauty within themselves.
And just going off of what Dahni said, I think that this is so important because students don't see themselves. Black students don't see themselves. Students of color don't see themselves in school. And that's so detrimental, because when you don't see yourself and all you hear is stereotypes about yourself, you're going to start to believe those stereotypes and you're going to start to act on those stereotypes. So if you have your history and you're learning your history, you would understand and you would know yourself, and you would be able to understand yourself enough to know, like, I can do this, I can become whatever I want to become, and everything that I can do whatever I put my mind to.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing it. It's really important that what you're saying is understood. It's a travesty that you had to travel halfway across the country to see yourself, to see your culture, to see identity. And I think about that, and I think about students. I think about myself growing up and not having access, feeling like a raisin in a bowl of milk, if you will, from a, just in terms of the schools and institutions that I am physically, but then mentally and emotionally having that same feeling that, I wasn't valued, or that my people aren't valued, and then to get into our education and have to tell people that, our history didn't start in 1619, right? We are more than an enslaved people. We come from kings and queens. We come from, innovation, pyramids, mathematics, all the contributions that we have made since the beginning of time. You know, Columbus not discovering America, Africans being here several hundred years before, all those things, and are really important. Those are the kinds of things that you guys are sharing. And so I just want to just say thank you for that. I've got a son who is 11 who is really into your podcast now. Once we got turned on to it, and and it's just rooting for you guys, because he knows, because of what you're doing, he's going to be able to see himself in school and in the educational process. And so this podcast that you got going, tell us a little bit about the podcast, and what are some of your goals with this podcast? What do you really want to say? If you closed your eyes and you said, hey, this was really successful, what would that mean, or what would that look like?
So I guess I'll start off. But with our podcast, I know we've had 3 series so far. And our first series started off with basically just the minority experience, but from the youth perspective. So I know that with our first episode, it was Your Independence is Not Ours. And we were talking about the 4th of July and what the 4th of July really means to Black people, because what it was like, we were focusing on what circumstances the Black people were in this country when the 4th of July when Americans got their independence and when the 4th of July was being celebrated. And we talked about things like generational trauma and how that plays out in education, how that plays out in students' education, how we may not even realize that we are going through generational trauma. And we really just want to bring out information, not just to older generations, but I know in the beginning we really were speaking to the youth as well, because we wanted them to understand and see the things that we had just started to realize. And we wanted to be able to educate them so that they know better for the future and are more grounded within their education and within their history within themselves. Not only that, but I know our second series, we actually use some of those episodes for professional developments for our teachers, kind of going based off of the generational trauma and how to truly interact with students in classrooms and really provide the support that each student needs so that they can be met where they're at and provide equity within classrooms. And then our last series is about our No Justice, No Peace resolution and just being able to keep it alive, because DPS did go, we got a new superintendent and we want to make sure that our resolution is not just something that, is said, but there are no actions put behind it, because that happens a lot, especially when it comes to learning about Black history and just things that are for the progression of Black people. And yeah, I'll let another girl speak to the rest of our series.
Not really much I could add on to what Jenelle said, but I guess I can kind of talk about the creation of the podcast and how we first started. And I would like to introduce that Jenelle was actually a big person who came up with the idea of starting a podcast, and we all were just so excited about it. So we decided to help build this podcast. And just to get started, we saw everything that was happening, especially with George Floyd and the protests. And we were actually wanted to go protest for George Floyd and say that Black Lives Matter, we need to do this for our people and all this. But Miss Grayson, our principal, which actually told us she didn't want us going to the protest just because it turned out to be a little violent, and she wanted us to be very safe and she wanted to take care of us. So we were thinking of another way we could possibly use our voice to amplify what we wanted to say and speak up for our people. And that is when Jenelle came up with the idea of starting a podcast, and we were all just like so excited about it that we wanted to start as well.
Very cool.
And just to answer the question of like what I would think would be the best ending or just the best way for this podcast to turn out, for me, honestly, with all the attention we've gotten, like even being on this platform and being on multiple different news platforms and just different ways to spread our message, we didn't expect that at all when we first started. We weren't looking to like get interviewed by all the news stations in Colorado or talk to people on different platforms across the country. But we're very glad that happened. And for me personally, I just know that as long as the message of the podcast and our BSA and just the idea, not even the idea, the notion of getting Black history in all schools in America will just be, I guess, a good end all be all for me, because I feel like no matter what we say, no matter what we do, at the end of the day, our goal needs to be met one way or another. Whether you watch our podcast or you share on your social media, we really want Black history to be stepping in all schools in America, because it's far too important to just be talked about on our platform or to be talked about during a meeting and then forgotten about. So I feel like just for me, getting Black history in all schools in America and having it taught in a real, effective, non-whitewashed, non-watered down way would be just an amazing way for all this work to end.
My goal is the same as Kaliah's, but I just want to add that I don't want any student to have to travel 1,000 miles away to have to learn their history. And I don't want students to have to go online and do a lot of research and just extra stuff for things that they could be learning in school and should be learning in school.
Yeah. I think you guys said several things there. I mean, there are 121 participants on on um, on our show today, and it would be amazing if 121 people were to just shoot a quick email or phone call to the superintendent of DPS and just saying, "Hey, we met four fantastic young ladies today. We want to make sure that their resolution is real, that it's set in stone, not in ink. It's in stone, not paper." So I'm not telling you what to do, folks, but that would just be a really cool way to amplify and support these young folks. I think oftentimes as adults, we get a little complacent and we get the bystander effect sometimes, and we don't support our youth. And here's a great opportunity to do that. I'm going to shift gears just a little bit because I've had the opportunity to check out what you guys have been doing. Went behind the scenes and I got this book, right? And fantastic. Like one of the things that I thought was the coolest was the QR codes. Folks, hopefully you can see these. So you can tap on the QR codes. It gives you follow-up articles to read, videos to watch, ways to take a deeper dive. You guys are having a listening party. It's connected to hip hop and poetry and music and all things, just all things us. I mean, this is fantastic. So let's talk about the curriculum. What do you like about this? How did you find these folks? Like, let us know. This is tremendous. And it's a hefty book, right? This isn't child's play. So I'm impressed with what I've been able to read so far and look at. So I just want to hear from you. What do you enjoy about this? How did you get this going? How did you connect with the authors? I even understand that they've come to Colorado and done training with your teachers.
We actually we saw them, well, they saw us actually. They reached out to us. I know that I think Dr. Milton saw us on the Today Show when we were doing one of our interviews about all of the things that we had been doing in Denver. And I know that, well, everybody that touches and sees the book is in love with it. I know I personally really love the book. And it's just, you can tell that there was so much intentionality put into it, just down to the colors of the book, the everything. And it is more than anything that we had ever asked for. And when the writers had reached out to us, they said that, like I said, they saw us on the Today Show and they felt like we would be the perfect faces and the perfect people to be able to represent Black History 365 so that we could push for national advocacy of this curriculum and inspire other kids to do, well, other students to do what we're doing in their schools. And I know that like Black History 365 is everything. For me personally, I feel like being able to advocate for this curriculum and push this out to kids everywhere that will be able to learn about themselves, their history, their culture, where they come from, and understand where they're able to go and where they are going based off of their history and learning about one another's history. I feel like it's so amazing and such an opportunity to be able to advocate for that curriculum.
And just to add on, like ever since they reached out to us initially, they've given us so many wonderful opportunities. Actually, tomorrow we're going to be having a press conference where we'll actually reveal how the Black History 365 Young Solutionist Student Advisory Board is going to function. They actually appointed us as the directors of that board, and we're just so grateful for them and everything they've given us. And I would just say personally, one of my favorite features of the book would be the elephant experience, where basically like this book, one thing I love about it the most is that it does not water anything down. Even though it is a book that's being taught in schools, it isn't going to whitewash history. It's not going to try to settle down slavery to make it seem like it was just some event that happened for a couple hundred years. It doesn't hold any punches, to be honest. And the elephant experience is where basically in a classroom setting, teachers can slow down and check on their students' like well-being and see if they're okay to receive the information that comes with learning about slavery and lynchings and everything that happened to us for hundreds of years. And I just really love that because with Black history, it's very heavy stuff. Like if you go to the very deep depths of slavery and beyond, and this transatlantic slave trade, and even today, it's very heavy stuff. And I'm glad that they're not only holding no punches with it, but they're also making sure that the little kids and people who are learning this are prepared to take it in, especially because if you're Black, if you've never heard this before, it can have a serious toll on you. So that's just one thing I really appreciate about it.
One thing I really love about the book is that they're also making different books for the younger generations, such as like elementary and middle school. And they're going to do it in a certain way that they're still learning the facts about history, but it's not going to be so detailed where it's just like, but like go more into depth. And I think what's really cool about the book is, like you mentioned, Dr. Ross, the barcodes and the different colors and just like the African colors that are shown throughout the book. And I just think everything about that book is so amazing because when I first touched it, I actually got so emotional knowing that all the work we have done is finally in a book and more students could learn about it. And it just made me so happy.
I agree with Dahni, and I think my favorite part of the book is the music because each chapter has a song, and the songs are just so good. Like, they just give me so much energy, and they really help you understand the chapters that you just read.
Yeah, so the book is giving you content. It's looking at different learning modalities. It's interesting. It's raw. It's honest. It's the truth. You would think that that's what you would get anyway. And the reality is we haven't. You know, the Black and African American contributions and our history has been, you know, we haven't had a complete story. When I think about the timeline, right? Most people's experience with Black history is, okay, 1619, slavery happened. They say slavery rather than enslaved, so it's already wrong. Then it's like, okay, slavery, there was a cotton gin, then there was Martin Luther King, and we got Barack Obama, Black history, right? Like it's so many things are missing. And it's all deficit based. We're not celebrating. We're not talking about the beauty, the contributions, everything that is unique. And honestly, the fact that, the Black community really put this country on its shoulders and created it from an economic standpoint and so many other things. And so it's important that you guys are getting this knowledge. You're being champions for it. You're working for everybody else to have it. But what what we all know is with any great movement, especially in the Black community, when you have Black leaders who step up, it comes with consequences, right? Like sometimes things happen. And so I just wanted to kind of talk to you about, some of the things that that you've had to experience and overcome and just deal with because you're just doing this really great work. Let's start with Dahni on this one.
I know a lot of the things we had to there was a lot of people who did not appreciate what we were doing. And there's a lot of people who were just like, they don't need to be doing this. I don't want my child to learn this. Or there were students who were like, this doesn't benefit me, so why should I learn it? And the fact that you realized, or just everyone realizes, that no one is going to 100% agree with what you are saying, because there's always going to be some person who agrees with what you're saying, but there's always going to be people who don't agree with what you're saying. And I think a big point is just trying to find your allies, so that way you could push out your big point, and that's what we are trying to do. And we don't really pay attention to all the hate mail or all the people that don't agree with what we're saying, because we know what we're here for and we know what we want to see, and we know that the students will benefit from this, and that's what we're going to keep doing till we see the outcome.
Yeah. Other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was gonna say for me, one thing that one thing that did happen was once we started getting national attention, being on CNN and the CNN and the Today Show, was that our principal started getting death threats about us and death wishes and hate mail, and that's awful, especially when it's directed towards us and just everything we're doing. But personally, for me, I feel like we believe so much in something as right as this, that should already happen. That doesn't really, personally for me, I didn't really care. I know that sounds weird, but I didn't really care about the hate mail because I believe so much in this movement that I know that it's literally just people behind on their keyboard or people who are hiding because they don't accept the fact that they are racist or they have biases or that they can't handle strong Black women in positions of power. And I just really don't have time personally for me, and I know a lot of us on here, because we're all very strong people, we don't have time to worry about people who are literally cooped up on their computer, stressed out about what a bunch of teenage girls are doing to better education all across America and in our own school districts. So I feel like just for me, that wasn't really something I had to overcome, but it was something, the main thing I had to overcome was just mostly self-doubt, because I never really had a lot of self-doubt to begin with, but when you do get it, it can be a little bit crippling. Just thinking of oh, I know I'm gonna do this, but will people care, or will people actually stand beside me, and will people actually care about what we're doing? And luckily, there have been so many amazing people here helping us. And just for me, it was just overcoming feelings of self-doubt in myself and just ignoring people who are clearly doubting us.
And also adding on, I know that in the very beginning when we started and we had just really started out advocating and talking to the Board of Education for DPS, it wasn't so much an obstacle for us, but I know it was an obstacle for our principal, Miss Grayson, because she would tell us about how leading this work and leading us in this work could create a hostile work environment. And I know that that's something that is very dangerous for her as a principal. And she just stressed the fact that she was going to continue to back us up and support us because this is work that is very much needed. And with that, throughout any obstacle that we've had, we just keep that same mindset of yes, there are going to be people that are opposed to what we're doing, and there are going to be people who are trying to stop the movement that we are making, but that's just that much more of a reason to keep going and to keep pushing and advocating for the change. So I know that is definitely the thing that keeps me going throughout anything, even if it's just stress with the work of being a student and being an activist in your community. It's just how important it is to all of us.
Yeah. Alana, do you have anything to add there? No? All right. So, you know, we call this series, Get Comfortable Being Uncomfortable for a reason, right? Because we want to be able to have the courageous and unapologetic conversations that people need to hear. And I just want to thank you guys for keeping it real. I want to thank you guys for the work that you're doing. And I just want to say, that I'm really proud of you. I know what I was doing when I was 16 and 17, and it wasn't this, right? And so, I wish, you guys were around when I was 16 and 17 to get me some act right. It took me a while to figure out my path. And what you're doing, whether you realize it or not, you guys are role models, and you're symbols of inspiration. And I just want to take a quick moment while I have the opportunity to just say thank you for what you're doing. So let's talk about the flip side to that, right? So there are consequences. There are sometimes some bad things that happen when you're really doing the work, when you are fighting for justice, when you're fighting for equity. But then there's also some things that are great, things that you're really proud of. And so I'd love for you guys to talk about what it is you're most proud of with this work, what it is you're most proud of, what makes you most happy, or even just kind of the fondest moment as you've been doing this work over the last couple of years.
I think what makes me the most happy is the people that are behind us and the people who have had our back since the beginning, because this work is hard, and we've had moments where it's been so hard that we just didn't even know if we could keep going. But I know that the people that we have behind us and the people that keep us going are the best part of it. Like Miss Roberts and Miss Grayson, they keep us going no matter what. And I appreciate them so much for it. And it makes me even happier when we see that the kids that we're impacting, like, it's so cute when they come up to us and they're like, you guys are so cool and you guys are so great and thank you so much. Like, it's heartwarming, and it really makes us feel like we're making a big difference in this world, and that's all we want to do.
I would say the thing that I love the most about everything we have been doing is we actually have been talking to some schools about the advocacy work we have been doing, and we're talking to middle schoolers who are worried about going into high school or who want to start an advocacy group of their own. And just hearing them, how passionate they are and ask us these thoughtful questions, and seeing that this generation is so passionate about learning their own history is just really amazing. And I think that's my favorite part, is just seeing the smile on their faces when they ask us these questions, and us just trying to help them prepare for the future.
I know for me personally, I really do agree with what Alana and Dahni said. And I know another part of this journey that I really, really appreciate is just really being able to see how it all kind of came into fruition and seeing everything fall into place and fall in line, because I know that when we had first went to the museum in 2019, that was around the same time that the authors of BH365 started coming up with the idea and basically curating the curriculum. And it was so crazy that when they saw us on the Today Show and were able to reach out to us and have us advocate for a curriculum, which is basically something that we had been asking for the whole entire year. And when it came to the No Justice, No Peace resolution, we created that resolution, and then BH365 was there to continue, the movement and to further it, because we were asking for BIPOC representation in our curriculum, and we got a book that helps us. And since we are talking about BIPOC representation, we didn't know how it wasn't just um, uh we weren't just pushing for Black history. This adoption was just a catalyst to be able to get everybody's history into their curriculum, because we truly do believe that every student should be able to see representation of themselves in a curriculum, and that's all minority groups, and every student should be able to go to school and learn about themselves.
Really quick, I just really want to add to what Jenelle said, just really quick. Like she said, in our resolution, we are pushing for all different types of history for all students, because we do have Indigenous, we have Asian, we have Hispanic, we have white students, and this district is a mixture of everything. And I feel like that's why it's so important. And the reason why we're specifically talking about Black history is because of ourselves. Yes, we are Black, so we want to start with something that we know because we know we have missed out on it for a long time. And that's why we're just going to keep pushing until we get our history, and then we're going to move so we could get other people's history as well.
Yeah, and honestly, I agree with what everybody said so far. Just being able to talk to kids and just like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just an amazing experience. And for me, just being able to talk to such a wide variety of people is so important to me because it's something I just came up with the name now. It's probably already existed, but generational ignorance, where a lot of people grow up thinking certain things because of what their parents or what their family has told them. And of course, everybody's allowed to have their beliefs, but when people are grown up because their family thinks that Black history isn't important, or their own family may think that the history isn't important, it's so important to disrupt that ignorance because I don't even know how to explain it. It's just so important to make sure that you don't have a limited worldview just because of what the people around you have told you. And at the end of the day, I'm just glad that even for a few minutes or an hour or people watching our podcast, they're able to see us and get a new perspective and actually learn Black history is important, minority history is important. Learning about just all the different things that affect people who aren't like me is important, and especially young children because children, they're like sponges. I'm like a sponge. I'm still a child. I just take in things all the time. And just being able to educate students who are so young about things they need to know is just so important. And I just really hope that in the near future, students will be encouraged to not only look outside of their own limited worldview, but have access all the time to everybody's history and everything that they might not be aware of, because it's so important just going forward that we don't raise another generation of ignorant children.
Awesome. Alana, you got anything there? Or did, all right. Well, one of the things that, that I talk about in the community college system as we have conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion is the term thrive, right? And in our system, our goal is to be the educational system where inequity doesn't exist and all of our students and stakeholders are thriving. And as I've gotten to know you guys and I've had conversations with you, that I see that in you, and the fact that your resolution, is inclusive and not exclusive, right? It speaks to who you are and your understanding, and why identity is so important. And I just want to say thank you, because there are adults who don't figure it out and who don't understand, and people who use their privilege and their fear to stop them from moving this conversation forward. So I want to say thank you for committing to everybody thriving and the grace that you're showing in this process. With some of the bad things that you've experienced, you show people grace because you understand that ignorance is leading a lot of folks' actions. And your courage to do the right thing and not be bystanders. So many of us are victims of the bystander effect because there's somebody who sees us, can give us a helping hand, and they choose to walk by because they think somebody else will do the work. And so thank you guys for doing the work. But as you've already said, this isn't work that you're doing by yourself. You need teachers, you need peers, you need the community, all those things. But from an educational perspective, what advice would you give the educators? If you could tell teachers, whether it be middle school, high school teachers, college professors, what would you tell them about the importance of engaging in this work and being unreasonable about making sure they're connecting culturally with their students? How can they do that? What other advice would you give? Let's start with you, Alana.
I would say that Black students don't need to be saved. They need to be understood. And I feel like that's a big thing. Teachers think that Black students need to be saved, and they don't. They need to be taught correctly, and they need to be understood. We can't get anywhere unless people understand each other. And true change cannot be made unless everybody understands what change needs to be made.
Thank you, powerful.
I think this kind of ties into what Alana just said, but I think my most important piece of advice for teachers and just all adults would probably be colorblind and not color brave. Or I mean, be color brave and not color blind. I got that twisted, but you hear them in the background. But I think it's just an understanding of you have to acknowledge that we are Black and we are powerful, we are Black, and just acknowledge our skin, not ignore it. Because we have people in this generation who say, I don't see color. But I think it's so important that you say you do see color for that reason, because you have to acknowledge all students of color.
For me, one thing that's so important is don't be passive. And for example, if you're teaching Black history or if you're teaching current events that have to do with racism, don't be passive. Because like, I feel like one thing that's so wrong that has been so misunderstood is the idea of not only being unbiased, but allowing space for ignorance to be upheld in your classroom. So like, when it comes to conversations about anti-racism, be avidly anti-racist. Don't be just unbiased. Don't be just swinging one way or the other. Don't be just in the middle. Be boldly unracist, because giving that space for students to have ignorance in their brains and not having to be accountable for it leads to ignorant and hateful people who are like, I'm allowed to have opinions that Black people should like there are so many things that slip through the cracks because teachers and the people who teach these children don't correct it in the beginning. And of course, as I said before, people are allowed to have their opinions, but do not allow ignorance to be something that can be developed and accepted as an opinion, because it's just so important in general. Because I can't even express it enough without going on and on, but just be blatantly anti-racist in everything you do regarding students of color. Even if you're a teacher in a classroom full of white kids who have never heard Black history or Indigenous history or Latino history, be blatantly anti-racist with everything you teach, because then you're just eliminating ignorance and racism from the jump, and don't let them go out into the world thinking that racism and ignorance is okay.
And to add on to what everyone else said, I feel like teachers should try their hardest to really build relationships with each and every student in a classroom, because if you're seeing a student almost every single day out of 365 days of the year, you can't say it's going to be impossible to build a relationship with students in your classroom. And that can start out with something small, but I know that being able to have relationships with your teachers can definitely improve education, well, for a student. And I know that sometimes when you don't have relationships with your teachers, there are opportunities that you miss out on in your education. And I know there are small predicaments that happen in school buildings everywhere that could be avoided if a student just felt like they were able to trust their teacher enough to genuinely talk to them and genuinely be real about the situations that they're going through or what is hindering them in the classroom or just really anything. So just try your best to build relationships with each one of your students.
Mm. I mean, that's powerful. Building relationships, understanding your students, being color brave, right, and being unapologetically anti-racist. You know, the advice that you give, I think there are many of us who I think are saying this and speaking this every day. This stuff doesn't cause extra resources. It doesn't cause extra time, right? It's a choice. It's a character choice, and it's a moral code choice. And I think it's also a leadership choice. And I think one of the things that we're experiencing in the world right now is an execution, if you will, of leadership. You see people, even in Congress right now, right, just being scared to vote a certain way because political ramifications, you know, the whole concept of doing the right thing because of who you are rather than who's watching is being abandoned. And but you know, I think that the folks who are with us today would agree with what you're saying. I think they might agree with what I'm saying. And because of that, I want to ask you, from your perspective, what should people be doing or what could people be doing to support the work that you guys are doing? How can we help your advocacy, your journey, your goals?
I will start. I think one thing that would be helpful for us is like if you would be able to watch our podcast and be able to spread our podcast with others so they could get insight on the things we're talking about and the importance of Black history and just actually have conversations with other people, regardless of race, about Black history. And I think that would just be a bridge to starting to build this generation up and this create a better society for everybody.
I feel like the way you could help not just us, but other student leaders is to listen to us. And I don't mean just sit there and listen while we talk. Actually listen and understand what we're trying to say because we are the future and we're trying to make the future that we want to live in.
And going off of what Alana said, with us being the future and you guys listening to what we have to say, I feel like we'd be able to bridge the gap between older generations and younger generations that cause a lot of ignorance and misconceptions. And I feel like we would be a lot better off if we were able to really understand each other and have common goals and be able to get to each other's goals in a way that we both agree. And so, yeah, I just definitely agree with Lana.
Okay.
Um, for me, I would say one of the biggest things, like outside of watching our podcast and obviously supporting us and spreading our message, which is very important, just something you could do in your daily lives, whether it's at the table at Thanksgiving or talking with a family member or a friend you haven't seen in a while, or just people around you in general. Don't be afraid to call out and talk about racism, because I feel like one of the biggest issues when it comes to talking about racism is a lot of people come into the conversation ignorant because never been taught about it. And when they're younger, when they try to talk, like I remember one thing in our series about being color brave instead of colorblind is that a lot of children ask basic questions about race, but it's either shunned away because their parents don't want them talking about it, or because they don't see it as something important for children to learn. And honestly, being anti-racist is something a child can learn at any age. And just for me, don't be afraid to have conversations or call out your racist family members or call out people who are being ignorant willfully, because at the end of the day, if you let them get away with that stuff, it's just they're gonna keep influencing other people. And it's just so important because we need to get rid of the stigma that race is a taboo topic or that racism is something that shouldn't be talked about, because it's affecting people, especially with police brutality and literally the KKK terrorists. It's affecting people's lives every single day, and continue to ignore it like it's not a big deal or only talking about it in a political setting is so detrimental.
Thank you for sharing that. One thing, I've had the opportunity to talk to you guys off the scene, behind the scenes, and talk about the support question. And you guys are amazing, and you are keeping it so real. But I got to pull your card on this one. You are not keeping it 100% real right now, because I know that one of the things people can do to help you is secure books. And the books are $170 a book. And so I'm just saying, you need to tell these folks who are on here that if they want to support you, they can do that. And I think two ways that I'm going to support the work, in addition to just trying to be a cheerleader and a champion and providing any platform that I can to support what you're doing. I'm taking this conversation back to my colleagues at the community college system, because I want to see where we are in our curriculum when it comes to Black and African American history, and I'm going to introduce to my colleagues blackhistory365.com in the book. So I'm going to do that for sure, and see where that conversation goes. And Marianne, how can you get a book? You can go to blackhistory365.com. You can buy a book and take it up to MLK. And drop it off to the principal, Miss Grayson. The second way that I'm going to support you guys is, in addition to working for the Colorado Community College System, I also do a lot of community work, and I sit on boards and am involved with a nonprofit called the Urban Leadership Foundation. And so we're going to donate $10,000 to your school to help you get your books. I had a conversation with your principal, and I believe that the books are going to cost you guys about $70,000, and it's coming out of the budget from other places. It could even impact salaries and people in the building, but this is so important that it's an expenditure that has to be made. I believe that it's so important that, I think the community should get behind it. So that's what we're going to do to help try to offset that cost. So you'll get $10,000 from an organization that I'm a part of, and I would encourage anybody else to go to that website. It's I'll put it in the chat, www.ulfcolorado.org, and make a general donation and put MLK in your donation line, and we will make sure that all those proceeds go to support purchasing books, so that your goal, your work, right? You're at the finish line. I think the community should help you cross the line. So that's what we're going to do to help. So you can go to that website, go to the support option and do that, or you can buy a book and just take it to the school, whatever you want to do. I just think we should help these young folks get across the finish line. So that being said, is there any way else that people can support you in doing this work?
I I think we covered it. And I also want to say thank you so much for that amazing donation, because honestly, yes, we are leading this work and working every day to continue it, but we wouldn't be able to do this without community support and people like you and people like Miss Grayson and just everyone that is backing us up and supporting us, anyone in this call that is going to be helping us out. Also, thank you to you guys.
Right on, right on. Well, we are so proud of you, and I know I speak for the 108 participants at this moment who are on the call. Um, we are just tremendously proud of you. We are so excited for your advocacy, and just want to just commend you for being equity champions. And if there's anybody on this call or on this Zoom that has connections at Howard University, you should definitely drop a phone call, text message, email on behalf of these young ladies, especially Jenelle and Alana, who are currently seniors and want to be in DC being students next year. That would be just a tremendous gift to them. And we're getting ready to get out of here, but I want to give you guys an opportunity to just have a closing remark. And so just parting advice, final statement. One of the things that I've noticed is that you guys have done a lot of kind of media around this, but I've always noticed that it's been quick, right? It's, 30 seconds, a minute, and you always haven't had the opportunity just to speak and be heard. And so I want to give you these last few minutes to continue what we've been doing, but to really just speak and be heard. So we'll just start with Jenelle, and if there's any last things you want to share, the floor is yours. And we're going to finish up with Alana, and we'll turn it back over to Carol at Global Minded after that.
Well, I didn't really have anything else to say.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one thing, I'm not really sure who is all in the audience at the moment, but just any cause that you are trying to like create, or any change that you're trying to create, have it be for everybody, and make sure that your intentions are good, because I know that one thing that I feel has helped us progress in this, and especially so fast, is the fact that what we're doing is something that can truly benefit everybody, and it's a change that really is needed, and a lot of people are passionate about it, and a lot of people are affected by it. I've been able to see patterns all over the world of, just the same situation over and over, and of what one of our colleagues had called the silent oppressor oppressing groups continuously. And I feel like once you're able to have your idea and find other people that also agree with what you're saying, you really can do anything. You really can start any movement. You really can create any change that you want.
Awesome. Thank you. Dahni?
On a closing remark, I would just like to say, please, please, please get yourself a BH365 book and just like read it, share it with your family, share it with your friends, share it with your environment, share it with everybody, and just be able to read it and have fun. Just learn. And I can't stress that enough. It's just that book is so important. It's so amazing. And once you open that book, you'll be in love with it too. That's why I think you should just go get a book. Just go get a book. And I just really want to say thank you to everybody on this call. And thank you, Dr. Ross and Miss Carter, for having us and having this conversation. I appreciate it.
Right on. And I'm going to echo her and say, buy 2 books, buy one for you and then buy one and take it to Ms. Grayson at MLK and help their book collection. Kaliah?
Just echoing, like, yes, please buy a book. And also, just from me specifically, please support your, like, no matter where you are in the world, if you're here in Denver, if you're across the country, support your local student activist groups. That, like, I cannot stress that enough, because I've had the opportunity to meet with multiple representatives for student groups across the country, and it's just so inspiring. And like, once you dip your foot into the pool that is student activists, it's hard not to drown in it, because there's so much amazing perspectives of youth. Like, coming from the 4 of us, we have a pretty wide perspective, but like, if you go across the country and meet another student activist, it will be completely different. So please just support your local student activists, support your local student organization, support your local youth organization. Just support them, donate money, invite them to speak, work with them, especially if you're in a position of power. Give them a space to speak and make the change they want to, because being so young, it takes a lot of energy to do what we do. Student activists in general, including us, it takes a lot of energy, and it's something in a lot of situations what we're doing, especially with Black history, it's stuff that should already be happening in the first place, and we're dedicating our time to something that should be happening, but we still believe should be happening anyway, even though it's not. So just support them, acknowledge them, give them your attention, because like, if you're going to listen to us, you should listen to as many people as possible.
Right on. Thank you. Alana?
My closing remark would just to be the change that you want to see in the world. Any change that you want to make is accessible, and any change that you want to make, you can make, and you have the power to make. The world is in your hands, and it's just up for you to take it. And also, I just want to echo that me and Jenelle really want to go to Howard, and we are seniors. So if you want to help us, please help us. Yes, thank you.
Right on. Well, remember, folks, it's time to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Growth comes through uncomfort, right? Growth comes through having the courageous conversations. Growth comes through challenging your own biases, your own thoughts. And, I promise you'll be a better person anytime you learn from some uncomfort. So thank you guys for tuning in this month. I appreciate you being on this diversity, equity, and inclusion journey with the Colorado Community College System and Global Minded, who is doing this across the entire country. Always just want to say thank you and show appreciation to Carol and her team, because they're doing the unapologetic work. These young ladies are doing the unapologetic work, and I encourage you to do the unapologetic work. So thank you for joining us, and I'd like to turn back over to Cheryl Carter.
Thank you so much. And I want to just say, I didn't in the beginning, but the KPMG Foundation is one of our sponsors. And 25 years ago, they started something called the PhD Project to get more African Americans into the business schools and into MIS and accounting. And now they've got, some 3,500 faculty who are now presidents of universities. They're running places like Wharton Business School. And so I think you guys just need to know that we have a big network to support what you're doing. And one thing I want to offer of what we could do is we have a newsletter, which you all may get, but we would love for you to write your story as collaborators on this project. And we have about 12,000 readers a day. They're all over the place. And that's kind of another platform for your voice to be shared. And then this summer, in May and June, we'll be having a conference. We'll have different leaders from all over the place. We work with a lot of the HBCUs and the minority serving institutions, some of the tribal colleges, a lot of our ability status partners. And so we'd love to have you guys maybe do a session on what are basics of Black history for people who need to know some of these basics, who then can go and get more depth through the book and the program. So those are a few things that I think we could offer. And then finally, we work with the Female Quotient. We work with Aussie Media. That is a media company started by Carlos Watson, who's African-American leader, and they focus on the new and the next. They have podcasts, they have TV shows, and I think meeting Dr. Crystal Rose, who's the person that runs their EDU, would be great, and she would love to meet you all and hear about your story. So those are some other things in our bigger community. So thank you all so much. You're doing incredible work. We are so proud of you, and we want to continue in any way that we can, as Ryan will tell you, to support your really courageous efforts, because I hope as soon as possible in 5 or 10 years, there's not a need for this, because it will have been baseline set for everybody integrated the way that it should be and should have been. So thanks for everything, and just so honored to spend this last hour with you all. And Ryan, thank you for always having the most amazing sessions. So such a pleasure. So thanks to everybody who joined in today. I know everyone's got a million things going on, but it's so nice to know that this is it was a priority for 122 people. And I think we had like 160 sign up. So everybody will get your link. Everybody will get the information on the book. And we're going to ask everybody in the follow-up through Celeste to share it widely with their networks. So we can really travel your work. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you for having us today.
You guys, absolute pleasure. Take good care. Bye-bye.
All right, y'all.
Bye.
Until next time, folks. We'll see you next month.
See you next month. Bye-bye.
All right.
See you later, Ryan.
See you later.